Okay, so we're talking today basically about like how to have business such as an agent 24/7, how to take time off, how to travel, how to have a team that actually supports you. And we're talking about not only what does that look like, but what are like realistic expectations to have for that, how you can actually do that in a healthy way. I think that for me, if you guys know me, like I'm always like, there's kind of like a middle ground to everything. And I think the same is true here. I feel like we're not trying to say it's like this holy grail. We're like, you'll never have to work again and your team will do everything for you. But you can take time off and you can feel supported and your business can still grow when you're away. So it's going to be both. Megan, I feel like everybody knows you by now, but can you just give us like a quick little rundown, who you are, all that good stuff, what you do, and then we'll dive in.
Cool. So I am the CEO, the Chief Operating Officer of A Lit Up Life, and Lacey and I have been working together for
like 3.5 years almost. Yeah.
3.5 years. Yeah. So I started out as the OBM at A Lit Up Life and then have just kind of grown with Lacey over the years as well. So I kind of just handle all of the behind the scenes stuff, a lot of the day-to-day operations and kind of keeping things running smoothly on the back end.
So we're having Megan come in once a month to the group because I think it's just so important to hear that side of it too. Because she has so much of that knowledge. She's in the back end of this business every day. And so sometimes it's really great to hear it from me, but sometimes it's also really great to hear it from somebody else that's also behind the scenes and doing it. And she can give you different perspectives. She also has her own team. And so she has like both sides of this view, or can see both sides of the coin, if that makes sense. Meaning like she runs a team in her business, White Space, plus she runs our team, plus she is part of my team. And so she kind of sees like all aspects of team building and how to actually make your team work for you. And so this is super helpful. So one thing that's really true for both Megan and I is that we both really like to travel. And we both travel quite a lot. And I think that it's really important to share that because like, how do I want to say, like it's one of those things where like, it's okay if that's a value of yours, but there's a way to do that and a way to be able to travel in your business. Again, we both take that frequently. I was just gone for a week. I was gone for another weekend. You were gone for a week recently. Like all of this happens a lot, but I think that we have like very specific ways that we do that and we plan for it so that it's not super disruptive. And I think so that the business can actually grow while we're doing it instead of almost like stay stagnant. So what's kind of your thought on that, Megan, or where do you want to like dive in there?
Yeah, well, I think that is just kind of like,
Stephanie.
I think that a lot of times at the beginning of your business, especially, like you're kind of in the, like, you have to be in it all the time and you almost feel so connected to your business that it's super, super hard to step away where you almost feel, especially if you don't have a team yet.
Actually,
I think
that's
that's
a good
kind
question.
of the hardest
I would love to know for anybody that's listening, how many team members do you have right now? 0 is an okay answer too, like 0, 1, 2, 4, 5, whatever it looks like. Just tell us because then we can kind of tailor this a little bit more specifically. But yeah, I would just love to know like how many people are you working with, if any, right now?
Yeah, because I think that like, when you're kind of used to running your own business, it can be really easy to just like feel like you need to be in it all the time. And even though you like intellectually know, oh, I should take a break, I should go on vacation, I should unplug, I should like all of that stuff, it's really difficult to actually put into practice and actually schedule that time off, especially, I mean, like you said, you and I like to travel and both of us travel often, but I know that that's not everyone's jam. And so it's but it's the same thing. Like you still have to be able to take space
like
away from your business without feeling like it's going to crumble. Right? Yeah, exactly.
Joanna says 2 to 3. Stephanie says she's working with 4 right now. And she says she is like addicted to her business, so she totally gets that. I get that. Stephanie, we'll definitely talk about that. Julianne says 0, but I have planned out the team support I need, and I'm hoping to get my first team member very soon. That's so exciting. This will be super helpful, I think, Julianne. So basically, like what Megan said, like whether it's travel or kids or family or any, like you just want to go like and do your hobbies more or whatever. Like, you cannot be in your business 24/7 no matter how much you love it. I am someone that really, really loves my business, and I'm a control freak. So on both ends, this has been a very difficult lesson for me. Megan's laughing because it's true. So I've learned this like kind of the hard way, I would say. Not that it's been a super hard process, but just learned the idea of like, I have to let go of some things if I want to live my life and have this business really be about what I say I'm about, which is a lit up life and not just a lit up business, right? So one of the things, let's just start with, is I think you have to really like empower your team to know what to do for you when you're gone. And for us, that really involves having very specific processes and systems in place. I see that a lot of entrepreneurs run their business on a very like moment to moment, day to day thing. Like they're throwing this at their assistant or this at their designer or this at their team member or whatever. And then when they go on vacation, everybody's like, so what do we do? Because they're used to like just getting tasks on like maybe a day to day or week to week basis. And so that's been a huge thing that we've had to put in place, is like knowing like what's the process and what's the system well in advance, so that when vacations come up or time off or whatever it is, it's like we just implement the process in the system. It's not like almost like this whole big replanning and reworking. Does that make sense? Like, you really have to kind of know like what are the things that have to happen, instead of like, and it's a plan in advance thing, instead of like I'm just kind of doling out tasks moment to moment. Well, yeah, it's going to be hard to go away then, right?
Yeah, and I think that we're kind of talking about two things here, right? It's like systems and processes and
Yep.
also planning in advance. Like I think both aspects of that are like you almost like
Totally.
can't do one without the other. But I think that, I mean, even just like having a team, you have to be able to have systems and processes and have things in place where you're not just operating on the fly all of the time, because that ends up just kind of, you get sick and
Yes.
everything is on pause, or you know what I mean, where it's like yes, we're talking about vacations and traveling and
Yep.
taking planned time off, but like all of these things need to be in place also, so that if something happens that totally is not planned, that is also you're more or less
I think that's a
prepared for
really good
that,
point, because
right?
actually recently I think on like a Wednesday decided to leave for a funeral on a Friday. And I felt okay about that, because like nothing really changed all that much in what we were doing, except maybe I delegated one or two more processes that I would normally do. But it makes a big difference if I had to leave like that and I was running more of that like moment to moment kind of thing, where I was like, hey, Megan, can you do these three things today or whatever? Me leaving would have been really stressful for her and really stressful for me. And I think that's the cycle we get caught up in, that looks like, well, I can't leave, or I can't take time off, or nobody can do it how I do it or whatever. And when people say that to me, I'm like, I get that, because I used to feel like that all the time. Like, this is a little bit egotistical, but I'm just going to share it. But like, my predominant thought in business for a long time is like, nobody could do it better or faster than me. Right? And Megan's laughing because she's like, proved you wrong, bitch. No, but like, it's so true. Like, I really thought, like, I believed that. Do you know what I mean? And so when you like deeply believe that, yeah, it's really hard to delegate. What I have found over time, and Megan, I think you can speak to this a lot, is that like, it's not just about trusting myself or the person or whatever. It's about trusting the system and process we have in place. And that has provided a lot of relief for me, and I think a lot of relief for my team, because the pressure isn't on them. The pressure is on the process, and we know that works. So when Megan's talking about planning in advance, she's not just talking about like plan in advance, what your process is, but like literally know, this is what gets me clients. This process reliably and repeatably gets me clients. So if I need time off and my team's doing that process, that's going to keep working for me. If I don't know what gets me clients or what makes me money in my business, foundationally, yeah, I'm not going to trust other people, because I'm going to think it's just about me. But it's so much more than that. It's about the system, right?
Yeah, because I think that I mean, anytime that like I feel like anytime that we have worked on something, it's like we have to talk through what is the process and what is the thing that's
Yeah.
going to get us to the goal, and kind of create, like, we
Yeah.
always systematize that as much as possible, right? Where it's like, cool, so your Facebook group obviously is like one of the biggest pieces of your business. And so like we have a lot of almost like
Yep.
mini processes around that, but it's like we have a certain days of the week that different posts go out, different days of the week that like different promos are going out. And so we have all these things that we have processes around that, but we wouldn't be able to do any of that without Lacey, you knowing what the priority is, what gets you clients, what is important to you in building the community, and what works, right?
Yeah.
It was like it's a twofold
Exactly.
thing,
Yeah.
right?
Stephanie says that she loves that. She does feel like she's the best at what she does, which I think is a good thing. It's just towing that line, right? Where you're like, and people can help me do it. Nico says, hey, hi, girl. Stephanie says the system is just so important. Exactly. Like, I think it's almost like what I have learned is like, okay, I'm really good at what I do. So my job is to now translate that to my team and be like, hey, what I notice is that this thing works really well, this thing works really well, and this thing works really well. So let's do that. And that's my responsibility. And this is something Megan and I talk about a lot, which is like, we each have like our own levels and layers of responsibility. Like mine is to know what actually works in my business and to be really clear on that and to be really tapped in and tuned into that. Like as the CEO, I have to be paying attention to like clients convert when this happens. The process works really well like this. Like that's my fucking job, right? Her job is to be really good at figuring out, well, how do we execute on that? What's the fastest, simplest way to make that happen and to get that out there and to kind of like whatever, implement and improve this process. But I think that like both things have to come together. I think a lot of entrepreneurs kind of feel like their team should come in and know what gets them clients. And I think that is a piece that makes things much more difficult. But if you're like, yo, team, this is what gets me clients, so I'm out for a week, how do we keep these going? That's the magic, right?
Yeah, and I think that like a kind of another layer to that too is like this can also happen with like I think it's important to have kind of your day-to-day operations, like having processes
Yep.
and systems for day-to-day operations, but also for any type of launch. If you're doing launches or anything like that, any type of like just
Yep.
like event or like one-time thing. I feel like even one of the things that has been really important, especially for you to be able to go away, has been to almost like we have created systems and processes that happen when you go away. Things are different. Things do operate
Yeah.
differently when you're not in the business, when you are on vacation, than when like normal Monday through Friday kind of thing. And so we have almost like those things where we have certain emails that go out, certain notifications that happen with clients, certain things that I add to my plate, or like, whatever that normally I don't do, but I pay attention to during the time that you're away and stuff like that. So I think, and all of that obviously just comes with
Well,
practice, I think.
yes.
Like the more, once you're
I think
doing
that's
it,
a really
you
good
learn
point to
that.
make. Like I try to say this to my clients about almost everything. I'm like, oh, it's your first launch. Okay, great. It's not going to feel easy or in flow necessarily yet, or it is going to feel like you're creating a lot on the fly. Like so many people are like, how do I make sure I like execute my first launch perfectly? And I'm like, well, you just don't. Like, I mean, like that's probably not the most popular thing to say, and I'm sure it like is less sexy than I'll give you my 5 steps to do it perfectly. But I think anytime you do something for the first time, it's going to feel a little more on the fly. So the first time I went away, I was like, oh, okay, I guess I need to like write this email for clients. I guess I need to send it on these days. And like it felt a little more, what's the word? Just kind of like on the fly. But now, once that's happened once or twice, it's so much easier. We're like, yeah, we send this email. It goes out on this date. And the important thing is having a team that will help you capture that process. So I had to kind of be the lead on that at the beginning. And I just cannot stress how important that is. Like that is not Megan's job to be like, oh, you're going away? Okay, well, as a first time going away, here's exactly what you should have to do. Like, that's my fucking job. But once I do that once, she's able to be like, cool, we saved this. It's a process. We know what to do. We'll execute it next time. And again, like, that's where the magic is. So watch what your expectations are of your team a little bit there too. And make sure you're kind of like stepping up on your end to be like, well, you know, it's the first time I'm going away. So like, what do I feel like I need? And am I communicating to my team to systematize it so that next time it's easier, right?
Yeah. Yeah, because I think that like a lot of like what happens when you go away or like take time away from your business and you're kind of like leaving your team to handle things while you're gone. Like, I think that it's just super important to be very clear in what's important to you and be really clear in, hey, this is not the only time this is ever going to happen in my business. So this is the first time we're figuring it out, but let's make sure to document everything that we do this time so that next time it's easier. And like actually verbalize that, because your team can't read your mind and they're not going to just know. Like, they probably are not just going to be like, oh, like I should probably just like document everything that I mean, maybe they do, and that's lovely and wonderful, but like, I think that it's just super important to actually verbalize everything, and even the things that you feel like you shouldn't need to
Oh my
verbalize
God, I
those
have so
things
much
too.
to say about that. Nico has a question, so I want to answer that, but remind me to come back there because I have
Yeah.
a lot I want to get out
Okay.
there. But Nico says, what if you haven't found what works for you yet? So when we were saying like, know what works and then create a system. And for me, what I would say is, do you at least know what system you're implementing right now or what strategy you're implementing to figure out what works? Like, so, you know, my clients that are brand new, yeah, we don't know what works yet, but we have a 90-day strategy that we're implementing, right? So at least know what that is so you can be able to say to your VA or whatever, like, this is the strategy we're implementing right now for the next 90 days. How can we make sure that's implemented while I'm away? So the most important thing you can do is like at least be very clear on what you're working on right now, right?
Yeah, and I think that like one of the things that's important there too is like, probably you don't want to start something new that is going to require you in the middle of like being gone, right? Where like you're not starting, like if it's like you're up with the 90 days and you're starting a different strategy or implementing something new, you don't want to plan that for like to start that process while you're in the middle of being away. Like, I think that you know, just try to kind of like think about that, where you want to almost be able to just be in a mode of consistency while you're away so that things just keep rolling forward.
Totally. So it's not like you're like, hey team, we're implementing this whole new strategy. It goes live on Monday and I leave on Tuesday. Like, that's a disaster waiting to happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
I think another thing that Megan was saying that I was like, oh, I have a lot to say about that is like I think so many of us really want our team to be mind readers. And that I have found to be super important is like, it is my responsibility to over communicate everything, like down to like, you know, we all just have different ways we think. Like, Megan and I think very similarly, and we still have plenty of ways that we think about things differently. And so if you're not constantly communicating like what you want and how you're thinking about things, it's just so hard for your team to make those decisions in your absence. I think we have another live stream we either did on this or we're planning on doing one. I can't remember right now because my brain is dead. But having like rules with your team, like Megan and I have really specific rules basically, which sounds less sounds less sexy than I mean for it to.
We need a new word.
But like, she knows like how I really think about things in business, and like we have rules based on that. Like, if you get a client email, it always gets responded to in this amount of time. It takes precedence over other things, you know, like stuff like that. So like, it sounds silly in some ways to a lot of us where we're like, well, of course, if you get a client email, you respond to it first. But like, how is your team supposed to know that unless you've verbalized it, right? And so for me, and being a control freak, it's really helped me to see that like, it's not really about the control. It's about verbalizing and communicating all of that so that my team can actually execute it. Like, I don't need to hold on to it. I just need to be really clear what I want to have happen, right?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that it's just like going back to the thing of like, your team is going to think differently than you do, 100%. But also, your team might not know what the like big picture goals are. They might not know what you like. I might not know that like, hey, you have like X number spots on whatever, right? Like, I need Lacey
Yep.
to tell me things that are happening and communicate, hey, this is important for me right now. This is what I want to focus on right now. This is like blah, blah, blah. And here's my thought process around it. And here's why this is important and all of that, because then I can execute on that accordingly and change, whatever day to day tasks need to be done or prioritize things a little bit differently or something. But like your team is not just going to know that without you actually communicating that, right? Because they're not your business, like they're not the CEO,
Yes.
you are,
And
right?
even when you're
So
away,
you need to be the
you're
one that's
still the
like communicate.
CEO. They are
Yes,
not stepping into that
100%.
role.
Right, right. Well, and I think that like it's just one of those things where you will always be the most invested person in your business. And you should be. It's your business. And so like you can't really expect your team to be as invested or know the long-term vision of the business and be able to execute on that long-term vision perfectly without like you bringing them into that process. And even bringing them in and talking about it all the time, like they're still going to need kind of to be included in like that conversation along
It's
the way.
so funny because I learned this lesson like when I was in the nonprofit space in a really interesting way. So basically, like I started, kind of like an entry level position there and got a bunch of promotions really fast. And within like a couple of years was director. And so I went through all these different positions and the level of understanding I had at the director level, I could look back and be like, wow, when I was like at positions 1 through 3, I had no idea that we were even moving in this direction or thinking about things like this or that funding in this way even mattered or whatever. And I just saw that so clearly and like really saw like I would have made totally different decisions in positions 1 through 3 if I had known what I knew in position 7 or whatever, right? And so I really tried to bring that to my management and leadership there, and I saw it make a really huge difference. And I think the same is true with your team. Like, we're almost like, well, duh, of course I want to get clients or whatever it is. And it's like, but like, if you're not just being so explicit with that, like your team really can't know that and they can't behave accordingly. When I was in Switzerland recently and took a week off, Megan knew like our number one priority while I was away was filling our October value centered sales mastermind. And so she could act accordingly. Like she upped promotional posts on that, were previously written. She pulled things that I had already done based on that. She made sure an email went out to the list. But if I had just been like, cool, like let's grow the business while I'm gone, she probably wouldn't have known to do any of those things. But it worked. Like we filled that mastermind while I was away. And so I think that we just take that for granted so much almost where it's like, well, duh, of course they should know that. But like, that's like your biggest job is to lead the vision and like help your team help you. And like, again, don't expect any of them to be in the CEO position. Like, I'm about to go off on a tangent for like 2 seconds and then Megan will rein me in because she's good at that. But I feel like I just see so many entrepreneurs have very, very, very high expectations of their team. Like they want someone to be as invested, if not almost more invested in their business than they are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like they're like, well, they should like be able to set up a process and they should know exactly what we need to do and they should be moving the needle forward when I'm away and they should be like checking in on these things with me and it's like, okay, kind of, but like, are you even that invested in your business 24/7? Because a lot of us aren't. Like, and it's kind of hard as hell to stay that level of invested. So sometimes we're like hiring somebody at like $30 an hour, and I'm not like, saying anything about that or that like it should be higher, but and then we put all these expectations on them, like, and you should care about my lunch just as much, if not more than I do. No, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think that again, it just like comes back to like
Yeah.
all of it being expectations that like you can just
Yeah.
clearly set all of these expectations, not just when you're taking space away from your business and going like traveling or anything like that, but just from day one with your team. And just being like, hey, like I mean, this again, I think was a previous live stream we did at one point that we talked about. Oh, I don't remember, but like we talked about how like we
Yeah.
have regular meetings, like we meet together just to talk about the business and just to talk about what's coming up and what are the priorities and all of this. And so like I think that things like that can help you keep your team invested because like ultimately it's not their business and they probably have a handful of other clients that they're also trying to do work for. And so to hold that space for like, 5+ clients at one time is like,
Yeah.
it's a lot. And so I think that like understanding that and keeping that, what do I want to say? Like just like
Yeah.
having that manage your expectations of like their level of investment. Just because they're not like checking in with you 5 times a day does not mean that they're not invested in your business, but ultimately like you will always be the most invested
Exactly. And so
in
if
that.
you set up the processes and systems with them, it makes it easy for them to stay consistent for you and to stay on top of that and to stay really invested in like the long-term vision, but just the day-to-day process, which is like so important too. So I think that like those are the best things we can say is like have a process and plan ahead. Like on a really practical standpoint, there's one other or two other things we want to share too, but like if you have a process, it's so easy to get people to implement it. If you don't have a process and you're wanting your team to come in, especially when you're away and kind of like pick up the pieces and figure it out, you're always going to be disappointed. And so start doing it in advance. Create the process before you need the time off. Like Megan was saying earlier, it's why I could leave for a funeral 2 days later and we already knew what the process was. I think that so many people just don't invest that time on the front end. And it makes it really hard on the back end. Alyssa said, hey, Alyssa, how many people do you have in your team? I think we have like 6 people. Is that right? Megan's like,
I think 6. I'd have to count. Yeah.
Give or take. I think we have 6. But yeah, like, and that's another point is like when you're working with that many people, like I have clients that have like 20 on their team or even more sometimes. And it's like, if you don't have a system and a process, it's so tough. But honestly, it's so important if you have one person too, because even then, like maybe more in different ways, because it's like, if you have 6, they have to know how all the pieces fit together. If you have 1, there's a lot of pressure on that 1 while you're gone. So they need a system too. So like, no matter how many team members you have, like by the time you're bringing on team, you should be building processes that support it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like, so I kind of want to go back to kind of the expectations piece and just kind of talk a little bit more specifically about like practical things of what you can do to take time away. Because I think that like, a lot of it too is like, okay, but what do I actually do? And like one of the things that I have found that's super has been super helpful between us is that like the expectation is never that like you're gone and I'm just in charge of everything 100% and I can't reach out and I have to handle it. You know what I mean? We're like, yes, I like, yes, you need space. And yes, you're traveling and taking time away and difficult to reach. And sometimes, like, I know that at one point, I had been away and I was like somewhere that I wouldn't have had internet and stuff like that. So, like, I feel like, yes, there are circumstances where you're just gone. But at the same time, like, there needs to be some level of expectations of like, the business is not like you're not just like putting the business
on someone else.
Like, out of like you're not like passing it off. Yeah. Because I feel like that can be very just like I mean, it's just like an energetic thing too, or like you need to almost like be energetically tuned into it as well. But like one of the things that I really have appreciated about our processes is that like we almost have like a what would you say, like
Yeah.
a
Like a
tier
decision
system
tree
of
kind
like
of.
how important, yeah, like, and like how important is this thing? So like when you're gone, I'll send you messages in one way, and you're like, okay, cool, whenever I get to it, I'll answer those. But if I'm like, hey, something's on fire and like we need you, I know how to contact you if, but that's kind of like the, like, I don't do that unless I absolutely need to, but just having that peace of mind of like, I know how to contact you if I need to, but it's important to have those expectations of like, hey, you don't contact me unless you need to. And here's what an emergency is, and here's what
You know
an
what it kind of
emergency is
reminds me
not.
of, which is like a little bit cheesy, but it's true. It's almost like the way I'm not a mom, so I'm guessing, but it's almost like the way I would think about like having a babysitter for your kids. You want to set really clear expectations. You're like,
Yeah.
they can eat this and they can't eat this. They can do this and they can't do this. They go to bed at this time. Here are the reasons that you should reach me. If there's blood, if there's whatever, like if they're just asking to call me 10 times, don't fucking call me or whatever, right? And I think it's like a
Right.
lot like that. Like you're almost like leaving your business with a babysitter, which is like not the exact way I mean to say it, but you get what I mean. Like you want to set those clear expectations,
Yeah.
make sure they know when to contact you and how and all of those things. Because if you're just like, I'm out, bye, you're going to experience the results of that. So if I'm like, I'm out, Megan, bye, don't contact me, and something is on fire, then I have to have the expectation that I might come back to fires, right?
Right. Yeah. Which, like, I think is one of those things where it's like, you don't want to come back from your
No.
vacation
And I don't
to
want the
that.
business to have
And
that
you don't
happen.
want, no, no. Especially because a lot of the time, like, the things that like constitute like a fire in your business
Mm-hmm.
are to do with clients. And like clients are
Yeah.
the like backbone of the business. Therefore, like you don't want to be like, okay, sorry, peace
Or
out,
like
good luck,
someone's
have
trying to
fun.
pay
Like
you. Like we were trying
I'm
to sell
on.
at the mastermind when I was in Switzerland. Like if Megan, if someone was trying to pay and Megan had a question that she just couldn't make a judgment call on that, like maybe they asked if they could use like whatever Stripe
Right.
instead of PayPal or whatever the fuck, right? I'm just making something up. Like she would know, like, well, it's a priority for
Yeah.
us to get paid, so let me reach out, right? um,
Right. Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
say like I think the last part. So we basically talked about like empowering your teams, have processes and systems, plan ahead, have really clear expectations, don't expect your team to be mind readers. And then I think the last part for me that I've really noticed is like build trust with the people that are working for you. Like I really believe that Megan has my best interest at heart. Like that is the foundation of our relationship. So even if she does something that I wouldn't have done in that way or whatever, I never get upset because like there's never a question in my mind of like, did she have the best intention there? You know, like, well, I wouldn't have used that subject line or whatever. Like, who the fuck cares? Did she have the best intention and did she do the absolute best she could? Because that's all I'm doing when I'm running my business too. Like, you know what I mean? And so I think that like just having that really solid belief, like I would ask yourself that about your team members is like, do I really believe that they have my best interest at heart? And if not, like, how do I remedy that piece of the relationship first and or get another team member, quite honestly, if I don't believe that? Because if you do, it's easier to go away. And it's also easier to give grace around human mistakes because that's a question I'll ask myself a lot. Like if my team makes a mistake or messes something up or whatever, I'm like, but would the potential have existed that I would have done that if I was in the same situation? Like would I have misspelled that thing or sent that email wrong? Fuck yeah, I've done that so many times in my business. So I'm going to give them grace and just be like, it won't be perfect, but it doesn't matter. But if I'm like, they should be like doing it perfect, or like I'm like, did they mess that up on purpose? Are they being really careless on purpose or whatever? That's like a totally different relationship based issue. Does that make sense, Megan? What do you have to say about that?
Yeah. Or if you find yourself like being on vacation and you're like checking in on them like while you're gone, like not for any
Like out of
reason,
compulsion. Yeah.
not like they, yeah, like just like, oh my gosh, like I don't trust that they're completing things. or like I don't trust that that thing is going to be done on time, or whatever. So if you're constantly like almost like overseen in that way, I think that that is like a fundamental trust issue, that's what like you have to work on that relationship, or find different team members that are a better fit or whatever, because I think that that's ultimately like kind of the most important thing when you're going away, is to be able to just like trust your team and be able to be like, they're going to do the best that they can with what they have, and I trust that.
And I think
And
what's really important to note
that's
is
it.
that's built over time. Like Megan mentioned, we've been working together for 3.5 years. So like
Yeah.
that's obviously come with time, but it's also come with like a very intentional cultivation of our relationship. Like we make a very big effort to make our relationship a top priority. And I see so many entrepreneurs miss that with their team. And then they're like, why does it feel hard to go away? Why am I second guessing everything they're doing? Why? Because you haven't built that trust. And that is so incredibly crucial. So I would just say that's another piece of like kind of the planning ahead strategy, is like build the relationship ahead too. Because if you don't feel like you can like trust the babysitter, basically, why are you going to hire them? Right? If you're like, I don't really trust you're going to do what you need to do for my kids, like you're not going to leave them with your kids, I imagine. Right? But like the same is true with your business. Like you really have to check in on that and be like, okay, so either again, this isn't the right person, or it's on, the onus is on me to work on building that relationship with them. Like that doesn't happen overnight.
Mm-hmm.
Megan and I try to like convey that to people all the time, because people are like, I just want a relationship like you and Lacey have, or like you and Megan have. And we're like, yeah, totally. And it's like, because we work at it, just like if you see a couple whose relationship you admire and you're like, oh, I wish I had a relationship like that. I'm like, yeah, I bet they do a ton of work. Doesn't have to feel like work, but they do a ton of work to have that happiness or whatever in their relationship, to have that trust. And so that's another piece. Like, even if you're just bringing on your first team member, like that's the first question I'd ask myself, is like, do I trust this person, and how do I build that over time?
100%. I think that that's like probably the foundation of everything. Like I feel like that is like, whenever you are with team or talking about team or anything like that, like I think that trust is the biggest factor there, because otherwise you almost like, it doesn't matter how good your systems and processes are, it doesn't matter like how like your expectations, or like how amazing they are at like XYZ tasks or whatever. Like I feel like you just it if the trust in that relationship isn't there, then nothing else is going to feel like
And I
there's
want to say
ease
that goes
it.
both ways too. Like your team has to feel like they can trust you too, to have their back. And I think that like a lot of us miss that piece too. Like Megan needs to trust that like if she makes a mistake, or if she like whatever, like needs time off, or she wants to share an idea or whatever it is, she has to trust that I'm going to have her back as much as I expect for her to have mine. And I think that's really important. Like we take a mentality of like, if someone's on our team and they're doing a really exceptional job and they need something, we're going to bend over backwards for that. We're going to like do what we can for that, and like really make it feel like it's a two-way street. Like as much as I want to trust you when I'm gone, like you need to be able to trust that I'm going to have your back, and I'm going to be consistent with you, and I'm going to give you grace when mistakes are made, and I'm like all the things that I would expect, right? And I think that it's just easy to feel like, well, like I'm employing them, so I just need to trust them. But it's like, the reason Megan can do a lot of the things she can do in my business is because she knows that like like that we have that implicit trust, like where she can come to me and be like, hey, whatever XYZ happened, like what do we do about it, without worrying about her job or like her like reviews or referrals or any of that shit. Like, it's just so like they should, like your team should not be under that much pressure, just like you don't want to be.
Yeah, and I think that like it's one of those things where like I feel like from day one, we've always had the mentality of like, this is a partnership. And so therefore we are two equal people in a partnership working toward, for the business, right? And so I feel like you've always created a space where it's like, hey, come to me with ideas, come to me with suggestions, come to me with problems, whatever, and we'll talk about that. And I think that ultimately creates a lot of trust both ways as well. Just like having kind of that like open communication where it's not just like I'm dictating to you what to do and how to do it and blah blah blah, but like I genuinely appreciate you as a human being who has different insight than I do. So I would like you to bring that insight and we can
And
discuss that,
again,
right?
remember that that's like a bonus. Like I think that sometimes we're like, and bring me all the
Yeah.
insight into like exactly what processes I should have and what we should be doing to grow my list and my business. And it's like, no, that's on you. But when your team can see behind the scenes of those processes and they're actually the ones implementing them, then of course they're going to have ideas to bring to the table. But it's like, it's not an expectation, but it's like a freedom that they have, right? Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
good.
totally.
All right. So I think that's kind of it. I mean, I feel like it's just one of those things where it's like if you have the right processes and relationships in place in advance, and again, it's not the sexy part, but it's the important part, it's easy to go away. If you're waiting until you're about to go away to like try to build that trust or try to build out a process, you're going to feel like shit when you're away. And so it's like a worthwhile endeavor on the front end. Like Megan and I have been consulting with a couple of my clients on their team stuff. And like, this is what we're trying to push all the time is like, what process can we build now so it's easier later when things happen, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that like it's one of those things where even if you don't have a team yet, but eventually you will. So start thinking about these things. Start making notes of like, hey, when I like here are things that I notice that I'm doing every time that I'm unavailable to my clients. I send out this email, and so save that for yourself, and then you can create a process for it with your
Yeah.
team down the line. So it's like little things like that where you're just like thinking about setting those things up and just starting to kind of, you know, lay some of the groundwork to build
I
these
love that.
relationships
So
on.
true. So good. Thank you so much for being here. I know I say this every time, but I'm going to say it again. Like, Megan does not have to be here. She's not getting paid for this. She is full. She, like, literally has just been with us for 3.5 years and loves this community and is, like, wants to show up and support you all. So, and me, obviously. Thank you. So, thank you for being here. Thank you so much for, like, always being willing to give your time and
Of
attention to this
course.
community. And if you guys have questions, if you're watching the replay or whatever, just tag us below. Megan will jump in and answer anything that she can, and same with me. But like, this is kind of the ticket. It just takes that advanced planning. So thank you for being here, Megan. I'm so appreciative of you. Bye, guys.
Thank
Happy
you.
Monday.
I love you.